COD pros are often late to practice and scrims and other professional settings where they face off either to learn more things with their own team or against other players in the league. It is a well-known and common thing out there, and it's been a trend so far this Call of Duty League season that many pro players have either woken up late, shown up late, or not shown up at all when it comes to professional scrims and practice and 10-mans. We've all known it, guys. We've also heard several public figures out there vocalize this, even with a guy like Hector. Arstees and Gunless, both in their separate podcasts, have vocalized the fact that a few Huntsman characters out there have woken up or shown up late to scrims in practice. No need to name names. I thought Hector brought up a great point, though, as to what people can do to try and correct this in not only the Call of Duty pro scene, but all of esports scenes. If you have players showing up late or doing things you don't want, and Hector voices his opinions on player fines. You know, fining players a sum of money to maybe show up on time, would that work? He thinks not.
You know, those moments are what make things happen. But back to the point of it, it's not just because obviously, like, I know who on my team is either late. I know who on my team is either trolling or whatever. I know that. But is it across the entirety of all Call of Duty that the people are just saying, you know, Call of Duty pros just don't take this thing serious? Yeah. And what would it take? You know, what would it take? Because obviously, like, what would it take? Finding people? Like,
finding people, it's like people that already have money. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I'll find a lot, right? Because I will do. If I get a $75 ticket for speeding,
you just don't get it.
Not right. But if somebody made that ticket way more, then it would matter. I would do the same thing. If a fine is X, and I know that I'm like, oh, that's what he spends on shoes. He just won't buy shoes this week. Then I'll double it, triple it, whatever. Like, that's not the point. And what sucks about that approach where you find people is that it hurts. It doesn't, but it never solves anything. You know, until that person, until you're able to talk to somebody and come to an agreement to where you're both understanding of the situation, you're both are willing to say, you know what, I fucked up. You're right. You know what I mean? Like, I fucked up. Until that person is willing to accept the fact that they are the problem, no amount of money, no amount of fine is ever going to correct that until it's corrected up here, and they want that self-improvement to happen. Yeah. So I always find it like a waste of time to find people. Is it fun to charge people $250 for me to throw out their garbage? Yeah. Does it hurt them? I don't know.
And all of this is incredibly ironic, especially for any OG Optic fans out there. For several of the Optic team houses, and most notably, it was actually in several vlogs where Hector would go around picking up trash and finding his players or his content creators. Now, I was never sure if that was like an actual thing or not, but it's funny to see, you know, a bit of a difference between that setting and this one. Obviously, when it comes time for leaving trash around a team house and potentially finding those players, that might work a bit better when dealing with professional Call of Duty players who already make a substantial amount of money, and like he said, you can find them as much as you want, but it won't change a thing. I just thought it was very curious because it's a huge debate, and especially from the outside looking in, I understand when I talk about this stuff, a pro player probably hears me talk and says, you have no idea what you're talking about or where we're coming from, and I would say a counter to that is from the outside looking in, you guys are very privileged in the spot you are in. You're being paid, you know, a lot of money to, of course, practice and play Call of Duty and play the game you should be loving to play, and you still can't show up on time, just like any other job. Even Arsty shares my same stance we talked about here on this channel, pretty much word for word. He said this in reference to Formal not waking up on time or potentially others doing the same. If this was any other job and he did not show up on time, he would be fired. And so I think that puts into perspective. I also thought it was very weird, though, that even a guy like Hector can admit when you're dealing with a Formal or a Scump, it does make sense. You can find them a couple $100 or even more dollars, and they make plenty of money. So it's probably not going to change their daily routine, and especially if it's not going to help the team at all, right? All of a sudden you start being fined and having to do things you weren't doing prior. It can really probably bust your mental. And so it's a weird thing, right? Where a guy like Hector himself admits that finding players is not going to get them to show up on time. It does beg the question, what will? The problem has consisted and persisted, I would say, more in Call of Duty than any esport I've covered. And it is a weird thing, right? Especially when you look at other esports, we don't ever see these complaints near as much. And so you wonder why. Obviously, Call of Duty players are nocturnal. They operate on a completely different clock than other esports guys, so maybe that plays a tune to it, but it's still certainly weird. What do you guys think needs to be done to make sure Call of Duty Pro players show up on time? Because my number one suggestion would have been finding players, but apparently that wouldn't work. Until next time, take care. Hope you guys are all doing well. Enjoy yourselves. I'll see you guys back here sometime soon.